It blows my mind that till this day, black conservatives are still called names such as Uncle Tom, as if that's an insult. That really gets to show how misinformed, uneducated, or just downright stupid some of these individuals are who use such terminology to try to insult us as black folk who do not live on this democratic plantation. And when I say democratic plantation, I mean that literally, because it was the Democrats who fought to keep slavery intact. They fought the Republican Party, formed in 1854 on the basis of slavery. It was the Democratic Party who instituted Jim Crow, the Democratic Party who created the Cool Kids Club, aka the K's, and the other K's. So it just blows my mind that a character like Uncle Tom, right? A story that is public for anybody to get into, and yet they're still using this as the insult when this man was an abolitionist in and of his own self. And this man was a fundamental part of the abolition of slavery. So when you call me an Uncle Tom, you are literally saying that I'm an abolitionist, which that's exactly what I am. That is one of my main intentions in life, is to free folks from that democratic plantation and to start thinking for ourselves, to free yourself from that victimhood or the victimology that you have lived under probably for the majority of your life. So let's get into the story of Uncle Tom as told by CBN News. Let's get into it.
When Uncle Tom's Cabin was published in 1852, the anti-slavery novel flew off the shelves. 17 printing presses ran 24 hours a day to keep up with the demand, making it the best-selling novel of the 19th century.
The book struck at our emotions as a nation, and it made us see ourselves. It was our emotional mirror, and it prompted some individuals to rethink how they thought of slavery.
Uncle Tom's Cabin has been cited as a factor leading to the Civil War. When Abraham Lincoln later met the author, Harriet Beecher Stowe, he reportedly said, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." In 1852, the backlash was immediate and powerful.
In the South, the book was banned. And if you were caught selling the book, you were either going to be killed or thrown in prison. There was tremendous fear that this book would make a difference.
It did by portraying.
Just like right now, if you are sharing information that goes against that woke ideology, they're looking to cancel you, to censor you, to make sure that your voice is never heard. In the same way, I mean, it was a little more intense, let's be real, right? You're going to get murked for having a book it's a few degrees more intense, but nevertheless, it's that same sort of silencing in order to keep people in that very same ideological trap.
Portraying Uncle Tom as a dignified, intelligent, God-fearing man. In the South, however, traveling Tom shows became popular, depicting him as a submissive buffoon, happy in his enslaved condition, a stereotype that still exists today. There were also attempts to discredit Harriet Beecher Stowe. The author countered with a key to Uncle Tom's Cabin, an exhaustive bibliography of the real people behind her fictional characters. It included her primary inspiration for Uncle Tom.
Josiah Henson was an individual who demonstrated extraordinary courage. He tried to help other people, especially whites in this country, to understand the reality of slavery.
Josiah Henson's story begins here in Rockville, Maryland, on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. Now, this suburban neighborhood was once a 570-acre plantation, and the house behind me is where the owner lived, a man named Isaac Riley.
In this time period, masters wanted to present themselves to be very benevolent, these patriarchs who cared about their people that were enslaved, but the presentation that Henson gives us was that didn't happen for Isaac Riley.
I faithfully served Riley for many years. He was coarse and vulgar in his habits, and unprincipled and cruel in his general deportment.
Henson's autobiography provides many examples of Riley's cruelty, like the day he discovered a book on grammar hidden in 9-year-old Josiah's cap.
When Riley saw the book, of course, he was outraged because it was unheard of that his enslaved people would learn to read and write.
"Pick up that book," he cried, using an awful oath. At last I was obliged to do it. When he beat me across the head and back till my eyes were swollen and I became unconscious.
Despite the harsh treatment, Henson proved to be trustworthy. Eventually elevated to overseeing the plantation, he was able to ease the harsh conditions faced by his fellow slaves. When he was 18, he was even allowed to attend a revival meeting. Although not permitted to enter the church, he heard a life-changing message from preacher John McKinney.
He said, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, tasted death for every man. It touched my heart, and I cried out, I wonder if Jesus Christ died for me. Again and again did the preacher reiterate the words, for every man. Oh, the blessedness and sweetness of feeling that I was loved.
And that meant a lot to him because he knew that God would always be on his side. He would deliver him, and he would decide his plan in life.
The plan included moving his family and 18 others to Isaac Riley's brother's home in Kentucky. When they got to Cincinnati, Henson found his faithfulness tested. Although Ohio was a free state and many free black men encouraged them to stay, he stood firm.
He felt like...
That's the thing many forget about the historic context, is that there was always a rift in America, in the quote-unquote so-called United States of America. Even in 1776, there was petitions for the abolition of slavery. Thomas Jefferson tried to write it into the Constitution. John Adams was an abolitionist. Who else was back in those days? Benjamin Franklin, a sophisticated man of his time. Thomas Paine, another Thomas. These individuals were in opposition of slavery even during their own time. So we have this like kind of image of, oh, it was just all the white people were doing this one thing and they were all for it. That's never been historically accurate in any of the world, where slavery has existed in every single continent, in almost every single area, geographically, as well as every sort of empire. It doesn't mean that everybody stood for that it doesn't mean that everybody stood for that institution, that everybody was supportive of that institution. And so, again, when you really get into the history of it, you start to see that there was a rift taking place far beyond. That's why there was a Republican Party to be formed. It wasn't like these people came out of nowhere. They were people who already had the abolitionist mindset.
He had been tasked with this duty, and he was going to fulfill it. He had taken care of them, and they felt like if he wants us to carry along, we'll go with him.
Henson came to regret that decision. 3 years after their arrival in Kentucky, those who followed him were put up for auction.
Husbands and wives, parents and children were to be separated forever. From that hour, I saw through, hated, and cursed the whole system of slavery. One absorbing purpose occupied my soul: to gain freedom, self-assertion, and deliverance from the cruel caprices and fortunes of dissolute tyrants.
Because of Henson's management skills, he and his family were initially allowed to stay together. 2 years later, however, his time had come. The only option: escape. A major obstacle was the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, which meant he and his family could be captured even in a free state. So he set his sights on Canada.
It was a 600-mile journey that he would have to make on foot with his wife and 4 children, traveling by night, sleeping by day, super dangerous. But he knows he's got to go to Canada. It's the only place that he can truly be a free man.
His wife,
Which is ironic because Canada has turned into anything but freedom at this point in history. But I digress.
his wife made a sling for Josiah to carry the 2 youngest children on his back. With only the North Star as their guide, the Henson family began their journey. After 40 grueling days, they arrived at Lake Erie just across the water from Canada. A sympathetic ship captain offered to take them the rest of the way.
He put his hand on my head and said, "Be a good fellow, won't you?" I felt streams of emotion running down in electric courses from head to foot. "Yes," said I, "I'll use my freedom well."
Henson helped start a black settlement in Ontario, including a multiracial school, almost unheard of at the time. To raise money and awareness, he preached throughout the United States and England, where he was granted a private audience with Queen Victoria. During those years, He risked his life to help a total of 118 slaves reach freedom in Canada.
He's an inspiration for me personally, and I hope for many people as they hear this story, to use our freedom well, right? To use our resources, our time, our money, our energy, our voice, our influence, to use it on behalf of those with less than us.
Near the end of his life, Josiah Henson returned to the plantation he once managed. Although many of his experiences here were unimaginably painful, he could see God's hand in them. Later writing, "Sharp flashes of lightning come from black clouds." John Jessup, CBN News, reporting in Rockville, Maryland.
All right. This is the story of the real Uncle Tom. So if anybody ever calls you Uncle Tom, say thank you. I appreciate you. A resilient man, a man whose heart was set on a mission, and a man who essentially helped to, just by his life alone and by his example, helped to lead to this beautiful country that we now have. So tell him thank you. Thank you. I'm a free man indeed.
I used to be afraid of the dark, place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a